My boyfriend of 7 years won't marry me because I'm an immigrant. The truth is, I earn more money than he does. I'm a 29-year-old woman who came to the US 7 years ago as a graduate student from Indonesia. I met my boyfriend on May 30th, a few months after moving here, and we've been together ever since. He's a US citizen. After I graduated, we had a serious discussion about the future of our relationship. The atmosphere was tense yet hopeful. I made it very clear that I wanted to get married and have children. It was crucial to me that we were on the same page regarding our future. My boyfriend echoed these feelings and said he wanted the same things. I asked him directly if he saw that future with me because I didn't want to be in a relationship with no end goal. He looked me in the eye, told me he loved me, and assured me that we were definitely headed in that direction. His words made me feel secure, and I believed him. As of last week, we seem to be on the same path. We've been together for 7 years and talked about marriage occasionally, usually during quiet moments on a lazy Sunday or while sharing a bottle of wine on special evenings. Despite these conversations, we were both busy with our respective careers. He was focused on teaching, and I was deeply involved in my role at a technology company. Our jobs consumed a great deal of our time and energy. Recently, my company announced that there was a possibility my department's work would be outsourced. This news hit me hard because I'm an H-1B visa temporary worker. This development meant that I had to start looking for a new job as soon as possible if I wanted to stay in the US. The uncertainty of my situation added a layer of stress to my life. I knew I had to act quickly because losing my job would jeopardize my ability to remain in the country, which had become my second home over the past 7 years. Last week, during our anniversary, we were having dinner at our favorite restaurant, celebrating 7 years together. The ambience was perfect, with soft lighting and a quiet corner table that allowed us to talk freely as we enjoyed our meal. I summoned my courage and asked him if he thought it was the right time to consider getting married, as it could also help with my visa issues. I tried to present it as a practical solution, linking our love and future with the reality of my situation. He looked as if he was about to vomit. His face turned pale, he avoided eye contact, and stared down at his plate. After much prompting, he finally confessed that he had no plans for us to get married before I obtained a green card and became a permanent resident in the US. His words felt like a punch in the gut. I was incredibly confused and hurt because he had never mentioned this before. What was supposed to be a celebration of our love turned into a tense and painful conversation, making me question everything. He explained that he didn't want to be used as a means to obtain a visa. His words, not mine. He said he wanted to make sure that I married him because I loved him, not because it was a way to stay in the US, which could only happen if I got a green card. Hearing him say that felt like a slap in the face, as if he doubted my love and intentions despite our 7 years together. It took me a while to process. I sat there stunned, trying to make sense of it all. The man who had always been my rock now seemed like a stranger. I was questioning the very foundation of our relationship, desperate for clarity. I asked him if he'd be okay with moving to Indonesia with me if things didn't work out with my visa. His immediate refusal hurt even more. He said he wasn't ready to move. This emphasized how different our priorities were. I didn't react well. The mix of betrayal, confusion, and hurt was overwhelming. I felt my eyes well up with tears, and I knew I couldn't sit there any longer. I stood up abruptly, mumbled something about needing some air, and left the restaurant. I couldn't handle it. What had happened that evening had turned our anniversary celebration into a nightmare, leaving me questioning everything about our future, and I still am. I started dating him because he was the kindest, most generous man I'd ever met. From the beginning, he was always there for me, whether it was helping me adjust to life in a new country, supporting me through the challenges of graduate school, or simply being a loving, caring partner. He made me feel loved and cherished, and I believed that we shared a deep and genuine connection. Now, I feel like I wasted 7 years. The realization that he doubted my intentions all along is devastating. While the visa issues are certainly a problem, I didn't date him with the intention of using him as a safety net. I loved him for who he was, not for what he could offer in terms of legal status. It hurts deeply to think that he saw me as someone who would use him just to stay in the US. I can't believe that, after almost a decade together, he doesn't know the kind of person I am. I've always been independent and hard working and never relied on him financially or otherwise. I thought he understood and appreciated that about me. The fact that he could have such doubts after all this time makes me question everything about our relationship. It's a painful realization that, for all the love and memories we shared, he never really understood my character or my intentions, and that this relationship may be over. And it hurts so much. Update: a few days ago, I wrote a post about how my boyfriend of 7 years didn't want to marry me because I was on an H-1B visa and he didn't want to be a visa mule. I've been on an H-1B visa for a little over 2 years now. Before that, I was on STEM OPT for about 3 years after graduating from grad school. Navigating the visa process was incredibly stressful. I had terrible luck with the H-1B lottery each year, and as my eligibility window narrowed, the anxiety increased. The competition was fierce, and each year I faced the crushing disappointment of not being selected. Finally, in the final round I was eligible to apply and received my H-1B visa. It was a huge relief, but it had been a nerve-wracking journey. Securing the visa allowed me to continue my career in the US, but the process constantly made me aware of the precariousness of my situation. This experience underscored the importance of stability and the ever-present risk of having to leave the country if things didn't work out. The path to permanent residency is not easy. I know people who've been here for over 15 years and are still waiting for their PR. To those who DM'd me and called me a gold digger, you guys made me laugh out loud. I'm aware of the legalities around sponsoring a spouse for a PR, including the financial aspect. It shouldn't have been a problem for the following reasons. I'm a STEM major who, over the years, through hard work and dedication, recently moved into management. I work for a large company where I lead a team of talented individuals and oversee important projects. My career has been rewarding both professionally and financially. I make close to $300K a year. My boyfriend, on the other hand, is a dedicated teacher. He's passionate about teaching and makes a meaningful impact on his students' lives. But our incomes are not comparable. He makes about 60 grand a year, which is a decent salary but significantly less than mine. This disparity has never been an issue for me. I've always respected and admired his commitment to education and the positive influence he has on his students. Our different career paths and incomes never affected my feelings for him or my commitment to our relationship. We've been together for 6 years, and we have a joint account to pay for expenses like rent and utilities. We both contribute a percentage of our salaries to this account, and the rest of our money goes into our own private accounts. We don't manage each other's money. Since I'm pretty frugal, I've saved quite a bit of money in the form of savings and investments over the years. I've been careful with my spending and always planned for the future. That financial prudence has paid off. It allowed me to build a solid financial cushion. When my boyfriend was concerned about the legality of sponsoring me, if I had been eligible to sponsor him financially for over 10 years, I would have willingly discussed moving the money around to alleviate his concerns. I even considered buying a house that we could have made joint ownership, which would have strengthened our financial situation and shown my commitment to our future together. I could have figured out that there were plenty of options that would have kept us both comfortable and secure. I didn't rely on him financially, and I didn't plan to in the future. I've always been independent and able to take care of myself, and I would have continued to do so in our marriage. Financial stability was never in question, and I was willing to work to address any concerns he had. I may not have thought of everything, but you have to know that the idea of marrying for a visa only occurred to me recently, when the threat of having to leave the country loomed. The idea of marrying for a visa had never been a significant part of my plans. My focus had always been on our relationship and building a future together based on love and mutual respect. It was only when my company's announcement about a potential outsourcing made the reality of my visa situation hit me hard that I was forced to consider marriage as a practical solution. But it was never something I had thought about in detail before. My intentions were never to use my boyfriend as a means of securing my stay. The thought only occurred to me as a desperate measure when faced with the potential upheaval in my life and career. As for my situation back home in Indonesia, I come from a very religious and conservative family and had a horrible childhood. My family doesn't support my career choices, so I cut off contact with them when I moved to the US. They are not in the picture at all. I'm on good terms with my boyfriend's family, though. Now, my ex-boyfriend. I took a few days to collect myself and then talk to him. During those days, I went through a whirlwind of emotions: confusion, anger, sadness, and a deep sense of betrayal. I needed time to process everything, to think clearly about what I wanted to say and how I felt. I spent a lot of time thinking about our relationship, replaying our conversations and trying to understand his point of view. When I finally felt ready, I sent him a message asking if we could meet to talk. He agreed, and we arranged to meet at a quiet cafe we used to frequent. Across from him, I could see the tension in his eyes, a reflection of my own anxiety. It was a tense and emotionally charged moment, but I knew we needed to have this conversation to find some clarity and closure. It turned out that he was insecure about earning less than me. This revelation hit me hard. He confessed that he had felt inadequate for some time because of the significant difference in our incomes. Apparently, his friends had been making fun of our relationship, calling me the sugar mommy because I paid for most of the expenses. Their jokes and comments undermined his confidence and made him feel less of a man. He never told me this until now. All those years, I thought we were doing fine, but he was silently struggling with these insecurities. He felt embarrassed and belittled by his friends' comments. It hurt to realize that he had carried this burden alone, let it fester and grow into something that could drive a wedge between us. His silence on the matter meant that I was unaware of his struggles and unable to support him through them. I was blindsided by this sudden revelation. He didn't feel like an equal because of the salary disparity. The difference in our incomes was a constant source of discomfort for him, making him feel less and inadequate. Over time, these feelings of inequality grew, and he began to believe that I was only interested in him as a quick way to get permanent residency. I was speechless. I couldn't believe that his friends had made him doubt our relationship. The people he trusted had planted seeds of doubt in his mind, making him question my intentions and the authenticity of our love. It was heartbreaking to realize that their cruel jokes and comments had undermined his trust in me. The idea that he could think I was using him for my own gain, after all we had shared and built together, was. His friends' remarks had poisoned his perception of our relationship and created a chasm of insecurity and mistrust between us. I reminded him of how he had supported me during my graduate school days. Back then, I was struggling financially, trying to make ends meet while focusing on my studies. He was my rock during those difficult times. I brought up specific memories, like how he'd buy me groceries when I had little money to spare. Every week, he would show up with bags of food, making sure I had enough to eat, and never once did he make me feel like a burden. I also reminded him of how he allowed me to live with him during my senior year of high school. This generous act helped me save on expenses so I didn't have to take out a loan. He knew how much I dreaded the idea of additional debt, and without hesitation, he opened his home to me, providing a safe and stable environment where I could focus on my studies. I mentioned how he let me use his car when I had job interviews. He understood the importance of these opportunities and wanted to ensure I had reliable transportation. He never questioned it or made me feel indebted. He simply handed me the keys, wished me luck, and believed in my potential. These acts of kindness and support were a testament to his love and generosity. I wanted him to remember how we had always been there for each other, and how his selflessness had helped me through some of the most difficult times in my life. I hoped that by reminding him of these moments, he would see that our relationship was built on genuine love and mutual support, not on any ulterior motives. I told him that he had done these things because he loved me, and that paying for most of the household expenses since I started working was my way of repaying him for all he had done for me. I explained that I saw it as a way to balance the scales and show my gratitude and appreciation for all his support. During my graduate school years, it was never about making him feel inferior or less capable. It was about showing him that we were a team, and that I was just as committed to supporting him as he had been to supporting me. He said that he understood what I was saying, but also that he hadn't expected me to start making more than him so soon. His voice was filled with a mixture of resignation and frustration as he admitted that while he believed in my intentions, the reality of our income disparity weighed heavily on him. He had envisioned a future where he would be the primary provider, and my rapid career success had caught him off guard, challenged his expectations, and made him feel like he was failing in his role, despite all he had contributed to our life together. I could see the pain in his eyes, the struggle between understanding my perspective and grappling with his own insecurities. I asked him if there was any chance he'd consider going to couples therapy, as some of you had suggested. I thought that perhaps with professional help, we could work through these deep, seated insecurities and misunderstandings. I hoped that therapy could help us communicate better and rebuild the trust that seemed to be slipping away. But he refused. He firmly stated that he didn't think he was being unreasonable. His tone was resolute, and it was clear that he had already made up his mind. He said that he wanted to be the provider in a relationship, and that he didn't feel like one in ours. This role was important to him, tied to his sense of identity and self-worth. He confessed that my higher salary made him feel inadequate, overshadowed, and like a man he couldn't come to terms with. No matter how I tried to reassure him, he maintained that there was no going back from this unless I quit my job and found one that paid considerably less, which wasn't going to happen. His statement was a harsh ultimatum that revealed the depth of his internal struggle. I was taken aback by the severity of his words. The idea of giving up the career I had worked so hard for and the financial independence I had achieved was out of the question. It felt like he was asking me to sacrifice a part of myself to satisfy his insecurities, and I knew that wasn't a viable solution for either of us. The conversation left me feeling helpless and heartbroken by his refusal to seek therapy and his demand regarding my career path. It made it clear that he could not see past his own fears and expectations. It was a devastating realization that our relationship might not survive this fundamental impasse. Long story short, we broke up. The decision was agonizing, but it became clear that we were at an impasse we could not resolve. The breakup was heartbreaking for both of us, filled with tears, regret, and a deep sense of loss. It felt like the end of a chapter that had begun with so much promise and love. His family was in disbelief. They had been very supportive of our relationship and had hoped he would propose soon. They couldn't understand how things had unraveled so quickly, especially since they had seen us as a strong and loving couple. His parents and siblings, who had welcomed me into their lives and treated me like family, were shocked and saddened. They reached out to me, expressing their disappointment, which made the situation even more painful. I moved into an Airbnb. For now, it was too hard to stay in the apartment we had shared, surrounded by memories of happier times. The temporary accommodation provided a necessary refuge, a place to start picking up the pieces and figuring out my next steps. It's not easy to determine what to do next. When the news of my company offering me a similar role in another department came, it felt like a beacon of hope in the chaos of my personal life. This role is based in France, and while there's a slight decrease in pay, the opportunity was too exciting to pass up. I've always dreamed of living in Europe, exploring new cultures, and experiencing life from a different perspective. I've accepted this offer. The prospect of living in a new, vibrant, and historic country like France was both exciting and comforting. It gave me something positive to focus on during this challenging time. I've signed the relocation agreement, and preparations for my move have begun in earnest. I'll be moving there in the next 8 to 12 weeks, which gives me just enough time to complete my current responsibilities, say goodbye, and mentally prepare for this significant life change. Although the transition will undoubtedly be bittersweet, it's an opportunity for a fresh start and new adventures. It feels like a much-needed reset button and a chance to rebuild my life on my own terms in a place I've always wanted to explore. What do you think about this story? Please leave your comment below to let me know.